The next item of business today is the members' business debate on motion number 8110 in the name of Rhoda Grant on World Prematurity Day 2013 and World Class Neonatal Care in Scotland. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I'd be grateful if those members who wish to speak in the debate could press the request to speak buttons now. I call on Rhoda Grant to open the debate. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am pleased to open this debate marking World Prematurity Day, which fell on 17th November this year. And I remember vividly visiting my great-nephew just over a year ago in the special care baby unit. He was just a few days old and just out of an incubator. And my niece told me that we could go and see him, but we weren't allowed to lift him or cuddle him. So when we went down, we were peering into his cot when a nurse came up and told us that we could actually pick him up and hold him, and it was a really special moment. Needless to say, he's now doing well and getting up to mischief, and those days seem far, far away. Other babies are not so lucky. 1 in 300 in the UK die within 4 weeks of birth. 1 in 7 babies are admitted to neonatal care in Scotland every year due to early births or being small or too sick. Therefore, the quality framework for neonatal care is welcome, and I would want to pay tribute to the work of the professionals, the parents who have been involved in drawing up the framework, as well as Bliss Scotland and SANS. Bliss Scotland drew our attention to the problems faced in neonatal care in their A Chance for Change baby report and manifesto, and they tell us there is a significant shortage of nurses for sick babies in at least 3 level 3 units. 4 neonatal units reported problems in recruiting doctors and consultants, and there's a lack of counselling services for parents who need emotional support, and a lack of accommodation for them when their babies are in facilities away from home. With regard to staffing, the British Association of Perinatal Medicine outlines staffing guidelines of a nurse ratio of 1:1 for babies needing neonatal intensive care, and that nurse should have a post-registration certificate in neonatal intensive care. A nurse ratio of 1:2 for babies requiring high dependency care, and the nurse has training in neonatal care. A nurse ratio of 1:4 for babies requiring special care. 3 out of the 8 neonatal units that responded to Bliss Scotland give information on nursing levels and occupancy rates that did not meet those standards. Neither are units meeting the minimum standards for nurse training. The RCN standards say that 70% of nurses working in neonatal intensive care units should have a qualification in specialised neonatal care. Of the level 3 units that responded to Bliss Scotland, half of them didn't meet that standard, reporting that it was difficult to release nurses for training. Neonatal units are having problems in recruiting consultant levels doctors as well. One nurse stated, "We can't fill posts due to a lack of applicants and a lack of funding." Because of this, neonatal units are having to close their doors to babies being born needing this specialist care. In June 2010, fewer than half of the units provided parents with access to counselling, and counselling is crucial because parents have gone through the trauma of having a child in neonatal care, and they're at higher risk of developing depression or anxiety. We can all imagine the stress of a seriously ill loved one, but the illness of a tiny baby causes untold stress. Therefore, counselling and support are crucial for those parents. Bliss also found out that there is a need for 38 more overnight rooms to accommodate parents. Babies and families have to travel far from home to access care because there's only 16 neonatal care units in Scotland. This has an emotional and a financial implication for the families who need to be close to their child, and therefore the ability to have access to overnight rooms, which allows them to be close to the unit, is both crucial to the parents and to the baby. We also need to make sure that there is adequate specialist transport available, and my region covers the vast majority of Scottish Islands, and listening to parents who have had their children airlifted to neonatal care units while they've been left behind on an island is heartrending. It's difficult enough to be separated, but somehow having sea between you and your baby makes it worse. And fathers often have to face the awful decision as to where they should be if the baby's mother is also seriously ill. They need support, both practical and emotional. It's right that specialist staff who care for the babies in transit are given priority on flights and in ambulances. However, we need to find ways of allowing parents to travel if they're fit and able to do so. We also need to make sure that there are sufficient allied health professionals to support families and children. Support them with physiotherapy, nutritional support and indeed speech therapy to help young babies with swallowing, as this is often an issue for babies who need intensive care. We also need palliative care support for parents, because I think this is one of the most difficult areas and it's essential that parents are supported through it. The quality framework deals with many of these issues, but it requires to be implemented quickly, and World Prematurity Day takes place every November, and it allows us to focus on issues on that day and it gives us an opportunity to gauge on the improvements that have been made over the year, and also to renew our efforts to ensure that we offer a world-class service to premature babies and their families.
Thank you very much. I call Mark MacDonald to be followed by Malcolm Chisholm.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and can I congratulate Rhoda Grant on bringing this important debate to the Chamber. It's a debate which has a very personal note for me. Many of the children in my family spent time in neonatal care due to premature birth. In March of this year, Presiding Officer, I attended the launch of the Aberdeen Neonatal Unit Friends of the Special Nursery scrapbook, Miracles and Memories, which was a project to bring together pictures and stories from people and families who had experienced the care and support of the Aberdeen Special Nursery. And one of the comments that was made to me by one of the mothers, Julia Ann Roberts, was that the neonatal care has led to very much a community spirit amongst those parents who have experienced prematurity and also the care of the neonatal unit, and many of them are now dedicated fundraisers working extremely hard to raise money to support the work that the special nursery undertakes. One of my constituents, Donna Scott, petitioned this Parliament on the subject of donor breast milk and the establishment of a donor milk bank that would cover all of Scotland. And I'm delighted that she was successful in achieving that aim through the support that the Scottish Government and the wider National Health Service gave to that project. And we now have a system where premature babies, regardless of their geography, are able to access donor breast milk, which, as we know, is vitally important for many premature babies to receive. One of the points that has been made both by Donna and by other parents who've been in contact with me is around the issue of the number of beds that are available in units, particularly in Aberdeen. And one of the points that was being brought to me frequently was the number of mothers who would find themselves having to be relocated to Ninewells in Dundee. Now, they couldn't fault the care that they received at Ninewells, but obviously that geographical displacement, as Rhoda Grant has highlighted, does cause difficulties, particularly for the wider family who want to visit and support the mother and the child during this difficult time. But one of the other interesting points that has been raised is around parental leave, which I realise is not something that is devolved to this Parliament. But the fact that for many fathers, for example, only 2 weeks statutory leave is allowed, and if you have a child who is in a neonatal unit for a number of weeks, that can often be eaten up during time that the child is not at home. At the same time, the mother's maternity leave is also eaten into by time that the child is spending in the neonatal unit. Indeed, one of my constituents, Wendy Eastle, told me of her daughter who was born prematurely at 27 weeks. She had 24 weeks of maternity leave. 1 week of that was spent in labour. 11 weeks of that was spent while her daughter was in the neonatal unit, which meant that she had only 12 weeks at home with her daughter before she had to return to work. And at that point, her daughter was only term plus 11 weeks and only weighed 5 pounds. It can also cause difficulties in terms of the breastfeeding and the attachment for the mother if she does not have that vital time because it has been spent largely in the neonatal unit. I do have a couple of other constituent cases which I would or constituent examples which I'd like to raise, Presiding Officer. So I hope you might be a little bit flexible in terms of the 4 minutes so I can at least put these on the record. I had a number of people who contacted me who I'm not going to be able to raise their points, but I have told them that I will send their comments on to the Minister outside of the debate. One of those is my constituent Alison Martin, whose daughter Sawyer was born 6 weeks prematurely. She said that the staff at the neonatal unit allowed her to be as hands-on as possible with the care of her daughter, and says they can't fault the care that the neonatal unit in Aberdeen provided. The neonatal unit in Aberdeen provided. But one of the more harrowing cases that I've come across was the case of my constituent Danny Rose Mackay. Danny was pregnant with twins and was taken in at 21 weeks with preterm premature rupture of membranes, or PPROM. One of her twins had no water, but one did. A week later, the other twin had none either. Both babies had heartbeats right up to labour at 25 weeks, but one of the twins, Lucy, had stopped growing. Her cord flow was bad, and she didn't cope with the labour, and her heartbeat stopped during labour. She'd been moved to Dundee at 24 weeks because Aberdeen had no room, a point that I'd raised earlier, but managed to stall labour with steroids, magnesium and a contraction-stopping drug. She was found fully dilated with her daughter Amy's foot visible at 25 weeks and was induced. That failed, and 17 hours later, Amy was born in surgery, not a section, but her cervix closed. Lucy was induced and stillborn, waters intact, another 7 hours later. Her waters hadn't ruptured, but diminished due to placental issues. And Danny makes the point that she felt there was a disparity of the service she was offered between that in Aberdeen and that in Dundee. This obviously predates the guidance that has been implemented, and I hope that will maybe change some of that practice. But one of the things she makes the point of is that she would love to see discharge packs being given to mothers when they leave the neonatal unit, and more appointments being offered to enable them to chart the progress of their children as they go on, and perhaps a dedicated outpatient department that can be the first point of call for mothers who've spent time in the neonatal unit might be something that could be looked at. So I hope I've been able to put some thoughts into the Minister's head as part of this debate, but I thank Rhoda Grant for bringing it to the Chamber.
Thank you. And I call Malcolm Chisholm to be followed by Nanette Milne.
Presiding Officer, I'd like to congratulate Rhoda Grant for bringing forward this motion, which reminds us that 8,000 babies are born prematurely in Scotland each year. That's 8,000 families, all of whom have the right to the highest possible quality of care, and 8,000 reasons why we should all join Rhoda Grant today in welcoming the new quality framework for neonatal care, and commend our healthcare professionals for their partnership with Bliss in producing this document. When put in place, the framework will offer new guidance to the NHS and offer support in the delivery of safe and effective person-centred care. The impact of premature birth on adult development is at present still a relatively unknown field of study. The Bliss campaign, however, has engaged with the Epicure study at University College London over the past 18 years, contributing to a longitudinal study of these effects. And on Sunday, the 17th of November, the next phase in that study was announced. The purpose of the study is so that the interventions made at an early stage can be based on well-informed evidence. With so much riding on the success of the framework, it is vital that we establish a better picture of what interventions are most effective, and this can only be determined through looking at the long-term development of premature babies as they grow into adulthood. In their response to NHS Scotland's 2007 publication, Better Health, Better Care, a discussion document, Bliss outlined the importance of getting it right for premature babies and their parents. At the time of the consultation, the main issue identified as working against the shift towards better quality neonatal care was a shortage of nurses to deliver the support of specialist staff. As Bliss highlighted at that time, while the care that neonatal nurses, doctors and other health professionals provide for sick and premature babies is excellent, the service is compromised by nursing shortages. While demand for neonatal services is increasing, the number of neonatal nurses employed is remaining almost static. So that was in 2007. It's therefore encouraging to see that the new quality framework aims to improve safety through ensuring duty rotas always have the appropriate level of staff on hand to meet the neonatal unit's needs with a high baby-to-nurse ratio. And Rhoda Grant quoted the British Association of Perinatal Medicine recommendations on that: 1 nurse to 1 baby in neonatal intensive care, 1 nurse to 2 babies in neonatal high dependency care, and 1 nurse to 4 babies in neonatal special care. Until recently, this has not been the case in Scottish units, and Bliss were right to make the case for a greater number of nurses in their contribution to the development of the framework, and perhaps the Minister will update us on that in his wind-up. All parents going through the pregnancy and birth process hope for a positive experience and the chance to bond with their newborn baby. Wherever possible, this should not be compromised by the baby being premature. Anyone who has experienced the birth of a baby as mother or father will know what a moving and indescribably special time it is. Quality neonatal care doesn't simply mean creating a safe clinical environment. It also means providing a nurturing and understanding place for parents and their new babies at this crucial point. Neonatal Care in Scotland, a quality framework, seems to recognise the importance of this point, and I have no doubt that Bliss were in part responsible for the immense progress made in changing the quality of care accordingly. It's great to see that steps have been taken, for example, to provide better person-centred care and a chance for parents to have greater involvement in the decision-making process. This includes clinicians collaborating with parents in the production of a care plan, including time spent with the baby as and when it suits the parents. In conclusion, today we recognise the incredible work done by healthcare practitioners, campaigners and the parents themselves, who in times of great difficulty can show such fortitude when given the right support. We also acknowledge, as I have done several times in my contribution, the vital role played by Bliss. I commend Rhoda Grant for bringing forward the motion and give it my full support.
Many thanks. I call Nanette Millen to be followed by Cara Hilton.
Presiding Officer, I too would like to begin by commending Rhoda Grant for securing this debate on the very important but not widely discussed topic of premature birth and the care of babies who are born too early, too sick or too small. Rhoda and I, and indeed the Minister and others, have been active in the Chamber this week on a variety of health-related issues. On Tuesday, we discussed this at Stage 1, the bill which will set the scene to enable the integration of adult health and social care across Scotland, aimed at improving the well-being of many people at the upper end of the age spectrum. Whilst today, we're at the other extreme of life, where there are many fewer patients, but where first-class care can set tiny babies on the path to a normal, healthy childhood and the lifestyle and lifespan that most of us aspire to. My first encounter with prematurity was when a colleague, himself an anaesthetist with a special interest in neonatal and paediatric care, became the father of a baby weighing around 1.5 pounds. I remember seeing this tiny scrap of humanity in an incubator and wondering how on earth she could possibly survive. Mercifully, she became one of the tiniest babies to make it in those days, and I'm delighted to say she grew into and through childhood and is now a very successful and healthy adult who must by now be in her mid-40s. My memories of this tiny baby were rekindled yesterday when I received an email from a North East constituent asking me to take part in this debate. He told me of his own personal experience, which he was happy for me to share with members here today. And I'll quote from his email because it highlights the importance of what this debate seeks to achieve. He said, "In September 2007, my daughter was born 3 months early and weighed 1 pound, which is the same as a baby of 22 weeks gestation. My wife and I were fortunate to stay in a city which has an excellent neonatal care unit. Without the care and attention provided by the doctors and the nurses there, and the support provided by Bliss, then there's a very real chance that my daughter would not have survived. Happily she did, and in August this year, she commenced primary school with the rest of her friends. Please continue to support neonatal care as the service provided saves lives each and every day." This uplifting story is about just one of the 8,000 babies admitted every year to neonatal care in Scotland, either because they're born prematurely or because they're seriously ill. But not everyone in Scotland has such a good experience as my constituent, with a report by Bliss Scotland in 2011 revealing a significant shortage of neonatal nurses in special, high-dependency or intensive care units, and the need in 2009 to close more than half of Scotland's neonatal units to new admissions at some point during the year. The report also revealed a lack of support for parents, like a shortage of overnight accommodation for parents who have to travel far from home to receive appropriate care for their babies. And having had the experience of staying for 5 weeks with a son who had to go to Birmingham for transplant surgery, I know just how important it is to have accommodation close to hospital with other people around who are undergoing and understand the fears and the strong emotions experienced by close relatives at such stressful times. So I commend the activity of Bliss Scotland, which works so hard to get the best possible care and support for all premature and sick babies and their families. And I welcome their contribution to the new standards for neonatal care in Scotland Quality Framework published in March of this year. These standards deal with areas such as the nurse-to-baby ratio required and the appropriate training levels needed to deliver safe, effective and patient-centred care, the coordination of care between units and the facilities and support that should be available for all families. And if properly implemented, they should result in the gold standard for neonatal care agreed by the British Association of Perinatal Medicine. What is important now is that Scotland's Health Board set out detailed plans for the implementation of the new standards within a 10-year framework, and I hope the Minister will assure us today that the Scottish Government will hold boards to account via regular reviews and open discussion about their progress towards ensuring that all babies born prematurely or sick will get the best possible care in Scotland. I look forward to his response at the end of the debate. Thank you.
Many thanks. And I now call Cara Hilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank Rhoda Grant for bringing this important debate to the Chamber to mark World Prematurity Day. As we've heard from Malcolm, in Scotland 8,000 babies a year are born too soon, too small or too sick. The care that premature babies receive during the first few minutes, hours, days, weeks or months will impact on the rest of their lives. For mums, dads and for grandparents too, this can be one of the most hard and anxious times that they'll go through. I speak from experience here because my youngest son, Luca, was born at 33 weeks, weighing just 3.5 pounds. Like many mums, I had absolutely no warning that he'd be premature. Indeed, on the day that he was born, we were driving back from holiday and we arrived home about 6:30. We sat down for tea and then all of a sudden I felt a pain that I knew wasn't a good sign. We rushed straight to the hospital in Kirkcaldy, just in time for Luca to be born just after 8 o'clock. We saw him very briefly before he was whisked away, and I was left in shock, holding a photo that the midwife had given me of my new baby, and that was me until next morning when I was able to visit Luca for the very first time in the neonatal high dependency unit. That was the start of a very long and stressful 3 weeks. All I wanted to do was to hold my new baby and to take him home, yet there he was in an incubator, all wired up, fed through tubes. Doctors and nurses were now his primary carers, and as parents we felt that we were watching on the sidelines. The care that he received from all the staff at Forth Park in Kirkcaldy during that time was first class, but there is no doubt that as a family it was one of the most scary and stressful periods of our life. Thanks to our fantastic National Health Service in Scotland, Luca is now an extremely vibrant and healthy 3-year-old. But I never forget how lucky that we are that he was born here in Scotland, because around the world 15 million babies are born too soon every year. 1 million of those babies will die. Indeed, premature birth kills 1 baby every 30 seconds somewhere in the world. It's a shocking statistic that's all the more shocking because 75% of those deaths could be easily prevented by keeping babies clean, warm, close to their mum and by breastfeeding, proven low-cost interventions that can and do save little lives. Here in Scotland, I'm really pleased that we've got this comprehensive set of new standards for the care of premature babies. It is vital now that we work to ensure that they are fully implemented. Central to this has got to be parental involvement and engagement. Parents with babies in special care are faced with multiple worries, not just about the immediate health of their baby, but worries about whether their baby will face long-term health problems, worries about leaving their baby behind in hospital, worries about how they're going to manage looking after their other children, worries about how they can afford the petrol for the constant trip back and forward to hospital, about how their partner will manage to get time off work after their 2 weeks paternity leave is over, worries for some about whether the little one will ever make it home. Families deserve better support in neonatal units than what they have at present. As the other colleagues have said, lack of accommodation means it's very difficult for parents to spend time bonding with their babies in the early days. Lack of creche facilities in hospitals means it's very hard for parents who have got other young children to manage. We know how important breastfeeding is, but breastfeeding can be extremely difficult for parents of premature babies when they're kept apart from their babies, when they're travelling back and forward to their home from a hospital that could be quite far away. When my son was in special care, I remember being shown a corner in the ward of the hospital where you could express milk behind a curtain. There was hardly any privacy at all, and it didn't surprise me that that facility was rarely used. I think if neonatal services to be family and friendly, then mums and dads need to be fully involved in shaping them. When your baby's in a neonatal unit, it's very easy to feel that you're a bystander. This needs to change. Parents need to be at the centre. The new standards will go a long way in helping deliver the family-centred approach that we need, and I hope that the Scottish Government will make these standards a reality as soon as possible to ensure that premature and sick babies in Scotland have got the best possible care and quality of life.
Thank you. I now invite Michael Matheson to respond to the debate. Minister, you have around 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I congratulate Rhoda Grant in securing time for this debate on what is an area of extremely specialist healthcare provision within our NHS Scotland. And can I also welcome Cara Hilton to the Chamber. This is the first debate. I've had an opportunity to hear her speak and to thank her for sharing her own personal experience in this particular area, which is, gives a real personal insight into this issue. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the support that's provided by organisations such as Bliss and others who give support to parents of sick and premature babies across the country and do a tremendous amount of work in raising awareness around premature birth matters. Presiding Officer, as a government, we are committed to ensuring sick and premature babies receive the highest possible quality of care provided by the most appropriate professional at all times, and recognise the vital role that our neonatal units provide in the form of intensive and specialist care for sick and premature babies. And only on Monday of this week, I was in the Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy at the neonatal unit, which is, I'm sure, significantly improved on what was there previously, where there is a level of neonatal care which is absolutely first class, with a first-class group of staff there, where I had the opportunity to see SamCam in operation, which is a system which allows for a small camera to be located above the incubator, where the mother is not able to be with the baby, but to have a tablet at their bed, which allows them to observe their child, their baby, at any given time, which parents have found tremendously useful. I'm also pleased that the motion that Rhoda Grant has brought before the Parliament welcomes the neonatal care in Scotland quality framework. We are extremely fortunate in Scotland to have a very high level of expertise available to us, and that was provided in the form of the Neonatal Expert Advisory Group, which we established in order to develop this very framework itself. And that included key experts from the health profession and other services and stakeholders across the country, including support groups such as Bliss and SANS. The expert group have played a vital role in also engaging with their managed clinical networks, which were established in 2010 in the form to make sure that we had agreed pathways of care and protocols for maternity and neonatal surgical services, in order to make sure that services and staff and facilities met the predicted demand that the population would require. The framework outlines NHS Scotland's commitment to providing the highest possible quality of neonatal care for babies in Scotland, and it aims to be a dynamic framework which supports staff in order to allow them to improve services at a local level. And the framework has also been regularly reviewed by neonatal staff throughout its development. I believe that the framework is very ambitious. It needs to be, in order to secure the best form of care for premature and sick babies. We know the implementation of the framework will take time, and I acknowledge that Cara Hilton and others are anxious to see these things happening as quickly as possible. However, I'm sure members appreciate the complexity and the specialist nature of some of these matters, and therefore boards need to have time in order to take forward its implementation effectively, and we will be making sure that that occurs. We've heard mention of workforce issues, which are not unique to neonatal care, given the very specialist nature of this type of work. But the framework offers opportunities for boards to move to a much more modern and stratified service, focusing on provision of safe care across the region, ensuring that the sickest babies are cared for by the right staff at the right time with the right skills in the right place. And neonatal nursing workload and workforce planning tools have identified that nursing needs of sick and premature babies has been implemented across the NHS in Scotland through our neonatal units. So we are making progress in this area. The tool takes into account the British Association of Perinatal Medicine that Rhoda Grant made reference to, as did Nanette Millen, on staffing recommendations, and it captures actual nursing workload in real time so that we can see very clearly the level of work that they're undertaking. Many of the requirements which are set out in the framework to deliver this high-quality, safe and person-centred neonatal care are already in place at the units that we have across the country. The framework is clear, though, that boards must put in place plans or pathways to also repatriate babies to the units closest to their home as soon as is clinically appropriate for the level of care that they require, and parents should be supported to help them with the choices that they face in understanding this. And the point that Mark MacDonald raised around the challenges that there can be in transferring babies and parents having to transfer to other units, that's why we need to make sure that boards are working in a coordinated way in order to make sure that we have the right staff in the right place to be able to provide the right care to parents at that particular point, and then to allow babies to return to more localised units where that is possible. We're also working to provide further information to parents, and we're taking forward a patient leaflet programme in partnership with Bliss to help to support and inform parents around what the framework in itself means for them as parents and what they should expect. Presiding Officer, in drawing my remarks to a close, I want to reassure all members that where any service change is considered as an option to meet the high standards set out by the experts in the framework, boards should do so in consultation and in partnership with the local communities affected. Scottish Government officials are in the process of reviewing the implementation plans received from NHS boards, and we will be meeting with the 3 managed clinical networks to go over these in more details. Facilities for parents, workforce issues and other points raised in the debate here today will be highlighted and will be discussed at that meeting. And potential funding opportunities going forward will also be discussed at the meeting as well. I hope, Presiding Officer, that this has given reassurance to members that we are determined to make sure that this framework is implemented across the country, so that we can make sure that those babies who require this specialist type of care receive it at the right time.
Thank you, Minister. And that concludes Rhoda Grant's Members' Debate World Prematurity Day 2013 and World Class Neonatal Care in Scotland. And I now suspend this meeting of Parliament until 2:30 p.m.